Hello, everyone, and welcome back to People Do Want to Know podcast. It's your host, Margarita and I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest and good friend, Brittany Levy. Britt and I have gotten close over the last few months, and what initially bonded us was navigating the young Jewish professionals event scene. If you remember the episode I put out featuring Shabbat Club, Britt and I frequently attend various Jewish events in New York, and it's essentially Shabbat Club times 10 every single week. I'm always out at different events with two main goals. One, spreading the word about the podcast, of course, but two, also hoping to find a man's. Anyway, I wanted to bring Britt on because she's an iconic figure of the young Jewish professionals world. She knows anything and everything about the Jewish community in New York, and she's built a reputation of being a very well-connected and a very well-respected young Jewish leader. A little bit about Britt. Britt went to Penn and worked at Google, American Express, and Resi, mostly in product management, before transitioning out of tech and into her current role as community director of Birthright Excel. Before becoming a professional Jew, quote-unquote, while working a full-time corporate career, Britt organized numerous social events for young Jewish professionals in Manhattan, which were stylishly branded under the name Produced by Britt. Britt would rent out clubs and host glamorous parties for New York City's coolest Jews and have hundreds of people attend. She'd have amazing photographers capture the events. It was really cool. And back when this began, I wasn't even living in New York City, but I did admire it from afar. I don't think she even knows this, but I subscribed to her Produced by Britt email newsletter years before her and I even became friends. In prep for the episode, I went back through my email to look at some of those first newsletters I got. And in true PM fashion, in the bottom of the newsletter, she had a feedback form to make sure she was continuously improving her events. In this episode, we talk about what the Jewish event scene's like, dating for young Jewish professionals, how Britt took her 5 to 9 passion for Jewish events and made it her 9 to 5, and quite a few other things. Britt raises the bar in everything she does. She brings a level of rigor, organization, and as cliche as it sounds, product management to the product, which is young Jewish events and experiences. And I think we're just seeing the very beginning of what she can accomplish. She's one of those people where one day I'll be able to say, I knew her when. For today's episode, Britt has prepared some interesting stats for us about the young Jewish community, and she has organized some feedback of themes that she's seen from young Jews since October 7th. Above all else, you'll get to meet a friend of mine, someone who I've spent fun Shabbat dinners with, many nights out, and one night, I even sat in the back of a packed cab between Britt and Kosha Dills. Oh, and let's not forget, a few months ago when I was recovering from RSV, Britt and I decided to go on a walk. And during that walk, I had a serious coughing fit, and she had to save me. So embarrassing, but hey, that's what friends are for. I have a lot of warm memories with Britt, and I get to give you a sneak peek of our friendship. Please enjoy this episode. Hey, Britt, welcome to People Do Want to Know podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here too. Without further ado, tell us about yourself. What do you do and how did you get there?
Okay. First of all, need to take a step back. For those listening, I have the pleasure of knowing Margarita personally, so I can confirm that she's as intellectually curious and cerebral in her unstaged life as she is on the pod. Anytime we're exchanging voice notes, I feel like I'm getting my own personal bespoke podcast episode. So I hope listeners enjoy being a fly on the wall of what it looks like in our DMs. But anyway, about me. Professionally, my background is in product management. I started as a PM at American Express. Then when Amex acquired Resi, I moved over to Resi as an early product hire to improve their app and website. But more relevant to this pod, in my personal life, I've had several passion projects focused on community building within the Jewish community, primarily on helping secular Jews feel connected to the Jewish community and attempting to make being Jewish a cool and empowering choice. And I always saw this as my tikkun olam and what made me feel fulfilled. But I recently turned my 5 to 9 into my 9 to 5 and became the community director for an incredible fellowship for Jewish business leaders called Birthright Excel.
That's amazing. And how's that going? You're a couple of months into your new gig now, and you recently got back from a trip to Israel.
I did. Yeah, it's I've been in the role about a month, and it is as fulfilling as I was hoping it would be. And I get to wake up every morning and do what I love.
What does your role entail exactly?
So I'm focused on building Jewish leaders. So making sure that the fellows of the program are not just successful in their careers, but are making meaningful contributions to the Jewish community.
And for those who are not familiar with how the Birthright Excel program works, what does it look like?
So it starts as a 10-week professional experience in Israel for college students, and then it leads to a lifelong fellowship for a Jewish community. It's a global community. There's a one-to-one connection. Every global fellow has an Israeli peer, so that's a great mifgash component of it. And I'm focused on the under 30 fellows and things like fighting anti-Semitism on college campuses, building connections within the community, and helping people become individual Jewish leaders.
They hired the right person for the job. That I can say for sure.
I appreciate that.
And of course, you and I experience it every day, every week, the young Jewish life of New York City. But the folks that are listening are not necessarily familiar with how the young professionals Jewish circles operate in the city of New York. And it's kind of unique in that it's the biggest and the best of all young Jewish life in America, I would say, maybe even in the diaspora. I don't know. That's kind of a bold claim. But anyway, what's up with Jewish events for young professionals in New York City? And thinking to pre-pandemic New York, I feel like it's really changed. Now that you've dedicated your career to this full time, where do you think this is headed?
Okay, great questions. I'm going to assume that listeners have no prior knowledge and explain this as though I'm talking to an alien who just entered planet Earth and is looking for Shabbat plans. So now I'm picturing ET with a kippah on. Okay, so as you said, big community of Jews here in New York City. New York City is home to the largest number of Jews outside of Israel. There are about 890,000 Jews in the 5 boroughs of New York City. And of those, about 30% are in the young professional age range. So that means there are about 270,000 young Jewish professionals in New York City. So this population is consequential enough that we don't just have one central Jewish community. We have segmentation into several niche communities. And this is a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing, of course, because we're so fortunate that Jewish community is very accessible, and we have the privilege of being able to find our unique place wherever we feel connected to a Jewish community. But it's also a curse because we have this paradox of choice. There are so many options that it becomes difficult to sort through the clutter. It's not like other cities where you have a Hobson's choice of 1 or 2 Chabad houses. There's no analysis paralysis there. So let me try to provide an unofficial lay of the land, how I would direct our Jewish alien friend on where to find their unique sense of Jewish community. There's your scene of more traditional Jewish young professional organizations. There are so many Chabad houses. There's a Chabad house in most key neighborhoods. There's also a Chabad Upper East Side that hosts something called Holy Happy Hour every Friday, which provides an accessible option that doesn't require signing up. There are several other Jewish organizations that host regular Shabbats and community events. There's Olami and Brownstone and YJP. And I'll give a shout out to Kenny from the Instagram account, New York City, because I think he does a really good job of collecting and promoting all the Jewish organizations that are hosting these more official events. Then there's also this whole other Jewish scene of more unofficial events. And I'd say these appeal to people who are more of what I'd call a bagel and lox Jew, someone who loves practicing Jewish traditions and surrounding themselves with other Jewish people. But to them, being Jewish isn't about wrapping tefillin or interpreting the Parsha. To them, being Jewish could be listening to a Jerry Seinfeld stand-up act, or going to a Chinese restaurant on Christmas Eve, or getting matzo ball soup from a Jewish deli. So a few years ago, I noticed a market gap in the traditional Jewish communities where there wasn't really a place for these so-called bagel and lox Jews. So they kind of just did nothing with their Jewish identity. And that's when I started to rent out nightclubs and host speaker events for this target audience of bagel and lox Jews. But now I can confidently say that there's no lack of options. It's so heartening to see so many individuals stepping up with grassroots efforts to build Jewish communities for this target audience. So I'll give some shout outs. Shout out to my friends at Maxwell Social, who constantly open their doors to Jewish community events, which, by the way, takes a lot of business courage in a time when hosting a fundraiser for Israel can be seen as political. Another shout out is to the different Shabbat groups that are hosting Friday night dinners that often open up into after parties, like my friends at Friday Tables and Shabbat Club and Elevate Shabbat and Gay Shabbat, whose founders were on this pod before. I could go on and on. I was getting a lot of questions about like the lay of the land of the different Jewish New York City groups. So I took everything that I know about this scene, my limited knowledge, and built a GPT that serves as an AI guidance counselor that can help people find their Jewish community that resonates with them. So I'm happy to share that with listeners if that would be helpful. But then I'd say there's even another Jewish scene emerging, which is like these super connectors who are stepping up to bring together their networks of Jewish friends, often for Shabbat dinners in their apartments. You and I have gone to several of these together. This is how I typically like to spend my Shabbats and what I've been investing my efforts into in an attempt to build Jewish leaders. So there's no one right way to be Jewish, but we are very lucky to have so many options in New York City. Hopefully that paints the picture of what's out there. But the second part of your question was where I think it's headed. So I think we'll continue to see a lot of strides in this concept of making Judaism cool. And I think that this so-called Jewish scene will continue to develop. My one fear is that we'll lose touch with the deeper aspects of Judaism, and that those who feel connected to the Jewish social community will stop at that and not explore their connection to the core essence of Judaism.
Yeah, absolutely. And whenever I have friends that move into New York and they get kind of overwhelmed of like, how do I keep up with the events where I'll go, where I like the people, and how do I know where the best events are, where I should be? Because on any given evening, there is more than one Jewish event dedicated to young professionals. On nights like Shabbat, there could be 4 to 5 Shabbats, each one at a different price point. And I always tell them that you're going to have to do process of elimination. You're going to have to go one by one to each organization and figure out where you like the people, where you like the vibe, whatever it is. There's no other way to do it because you can take someone's word for it, but the best thing to do is just go yourself and scope it out.
Absolutely.
You mentioned this briefly. You said you used to rent out clubs. I think you're referring to the iconic Produced by Britt Era.
Yes, I did mention that. So, okay. I started this organization. It wasn't much of an organization, a brand I called Produced by Britt. The genesis was that I was hosting a party for the last night of Passover. It was like a gold themed Egyptian let our people go party. And I rented out a nightclub for it and I sold tickets on Posh. And on Posh, they require you to have a name. And the default, since my name was Britt, was Events by Britt. So I started this thing called Events by Britt, like not intentionally. And then I started doing like more than just events. So I was like, okay, I want this to be future proof. I rebranded to Produced by Britt. And it's a regret of mine having my name in the title of it because I didn't expect it to take on any other form. But regardless, I was hosting events at nightclubs to create a place that I thought Jews would want to come to, and a place where I could appeal to someone who isn't interested in going to a Chabad Shabbat dinner, but still wants a place to meet other Jews and practice their Jewish identity and learn about Jewish traditions, and Jews and non-Jews, by the way. But then as I started to build a community around it and really have like recurring guests and people I was like building relationships with, it became a lot more meaningful, especially since October 7th. Like I was in a unique position of someone who already had access to a lot of young professional secular Jews who were looking for a place to go to seek community. So I kind of discontinued what started as Produced by Britt and took on a lot of other forms of Jewish community building. But there were some fun days, some debaucherous nights.
Yeah, specifically, and I don't want to speak for you, so I want you to talk about this a little more, but I think the evolution of Produced by Britt into these other events kind of mirrors the evolution that you had around Jewish learning and finding more purpose and observance in your life. Can you talk about how you decided to take on a more observant lifestyle? You recently koshered your whole kitchen. You used to take an Uber to put all your dishes in the mikvah. Like that's a commitment. And that's the same girl that through Ragers at the Club 5 years ago.
Definitely an evolution. It's always a journey. Judaism is a relationship, not a religion, they say. My personal story is that I didn't grow up religiously connected. Like, sure, I went to Hebrew school. I got bat mitzvahed. I celebrated the holidays. But I didn't really know what the Torah had to say about different concepts. So as I got more involved in the community side of Judaism, I didn't like not knowing what I was standing for. Like, I felt like I was joining the parade without knowing the cause. So I went back to the books and started doing some Jewish learning. I mostly engaged in Jewish learning at an awesome organization called OME Manhattan. So I would do their weekly women's learnings on Monday nights. I did their mentorship program where I was matched with a spiritual guide to FaceTime with weekly and build a really strong relationship with someone who I turned to for moral dilemmas and guidance in my life. I did their Israel trip learning program where I took classes at Neve in Jerusalem. Like, I really got into it. Sometimes I felt like I was getting like my master's in Jewish education. But after doing a lot of Jewish learning, where I netted out is that there are 15.7 million Jews and 15.7 million ways to be Jewish. I don't view it as black and white. Just because someone isn't Shomer Shabbos doesn't mean that they shouldn't light Shabbat candles or interpret the Parsha weekly or participate in other aspects of Judaism that resonate with them. For me, what resonates with me is that I like living a life governed by Jewish values, and I like knowing what those Jewish values are. For me, it's about thinking about Jewish business ethics as I conduct business and being intentional about not speaking Lashon Hara, which means evil speech, which is a journey in and of itself, something that changed my life to constantly be thinking about not speaking badly of others. It's about seeing the Hashgacha Pratis, or the divine intervention, in the little aspects of life. These are the things that more than anything else really changed my life and what I got the most from Judaism. So back to the original question about like how I started to actually like host weekly women's learning sessions. I felt like I would be remiss to not show others the aspects of Judaism that really resonated with me personally. I feel like it's my moral obligation as someone who often brings together Jewish community in a social sense to at least provide the option for people to understand what Judaism is really all about, because it's more than just the simchas. I don't have any ulterior motives. Like, I'm not in the business of trying to make people from. But it has been really fulfilling to see people who have that Pentele Yid, the Jewish spark inside of them, just have a safe space to ask what they may deem as a stupid question and navigate their relationship with Judaism.
When you went through this transition process, if you will, or this evolution, whatever we want to call it, did you feel like at the time your friend group changed?
It's an interesting question. Naturally, I started to surround myself with people who were spending their Friday nights celebrating Shabbat. But on a deeper level, I felt like I started to resonate with people who could understand like some moral dilemmas that I'm going through. Like, sometimes when we're in conversation, we'll just like cut it off at a point when we're like, okay, no Lashon Hara. So I do feel like it changed my sense of who I felt connected to. Whenever there's a Jewish individual moving to a new city, I always recommend that they seek out the Jewish communities in their city, regardless of their level of connection to Judaism, because I think it's just a really natural way to meet friends, people who are often aligned on your values, and an environment that kind of forces you to have those deeper connections. Like, there's no small talk at a Jewish learning class.
You alluded to this earlier about this concept of super connectors. I'll tell you how I kind of view the Jewish world, and then it will help explain or set context for my next question for you. Prior to the pandemic, it was really big organizations, nonprofits, maybe museums that would have a young leaders division within their organization, and that's how young professionals were engaged in Jewish events. Or if you take spaces like Chabad or other more observant spaces, some events were inadvertently focused around dating and finding your partner. There was this like hidden motive of like, okay, let's get these guys and girls in a room and see what happens. And there wasn't a lot of self-organized stuff. But then when the pandemic happened, I think the big events went out the window. More people stepped up on their own to offer what you call a community. And now I would argue that actually the most interesting events come from the people that self-organize. And they've raised the bar for just Jewish events for 20s and 30s in general in a way where Moishe House is now calling them up and saying, what can we be doing differently? What is it that you'd want us to offer for all of you to come back? And the intimacy and the curation, or whatever, the exclusiveness, however we want to define it, became the appeal of this Jewish programming. And these super connectors post October 7th were the biggest people to step up. We'll take Jill from 1,000 Strong, right? The self-organized, the donation of items to IDF soldiers, or people who became social media influencers as a result of the war, who were just self-starters and self-motivators. Now coming to the question, now that the context has been set, what do you think is happening to the young Jewish community post October 7th?
Oh boy. I'd say that the one silver lining amidst the otherwise harrowing 9 months we've had since October 7th is the awakening of previously unawakened Jews. These are people I refer to as October 8th Jews. They weren't awakened by the synagogue shootings. They weren't awakened by Kanye tweeting anti-Semitic tropes. But finally, after October 7th, they realized that the disease of anti-Semitism is very much alive and real. I spent all this time being the one on the outreach side, and I suddenly found the table turning. I found myself getting inundated with requests from people seeking Jewish community, people who previously weren't active, weren't in touch with their Jewish identity. And suddenly they wanted to take me up on that offer to get involved in the Jewish community. So the product manager in me realized that the fact that people were reaching out to me rather than much more qualified people showed an unmet market need here. So I started to collect screenshots of the requests I was receiving post October 7th and analyze, like, what are people seeking in Jewish community since October 7th? And there were a few main categories I found. The first is the desire for Jewish friends. A lot of people started to question who their real friends were. They didn't feel comfortable being vulnerable about how scary it is to be a Jew during these times, and they wanted a safe space. The second is the desire for bringing people together. And this was a lot of what the super connectors you mentioned were seeking. A lot of people wanted to gather their networks of Jews and non-Jews in solidarity. They didn't know where to begin in being an event planner. Like, what are the affordable venues where I can host events? How do I successfully lead an event? Where should I be ordering catering from? Does it need to be kosher if it's a Jewish event, et cetera, et cetera? A third question I got a lot was about being a Jewish advocate. Like, a lot of people wanted to stand up against hate speech and respond to anti-Israel posts on social media, but they aren't a pro on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and they didn't know the right things to say. The fourth thing I'd say is the desire to contribute. Everyone has a part they can play, and you alluded to this, but sometimes people don't know where to channel it. Like, some people have money that they want to give, and they want to know what are the meaningful organizations that are leading the war efforts. Some people have tech skills and want to know how they can use them to hack away at solutions to war-related problems. Some people own a physical space that they want to make available for Jews looking to gather. Some people have a connection to a great speaker who would inspire others, but don't know the right people to be inspired by that message. And lastly, I'd say the desire for Jewish connection has been something that really came up since October 7th. Like, some people really embrace this idea that just one mitzvah can be the action that brings personal and global redemption. So they started to perform mitzvahs like lighting Shabbat candles or studying Torah. In short, I'd say that since October 7th, I've seen a lot of previously unengaged and unawakened Jews come out from the sidelines and really step up to play their part. And my hope is that this isn't just a fleeting moment in time. Like, anti-Semitism is a disease that society has been plagued with for as long as we can remember. And I hope that this heightened consciousness and these proactive measures will pave the way for lasting change.
First of all, I completely agree with you. And what I want to underscore about what you said is the last part. You said anti-Semitism has been around forever. And that's the part that I think young Jews needed to wake up to. I think we had a good 10 years where there wasn't, a lot of anti-Semitism worldwide. And we were like, oof, we don't have to worry about this.
Yeah.
My parents told me this growing up in Ukraine. Okay. There will be anti-Semitism till the end of time. People will hate Jews. Just accept it and always assume there's anti-Semitism. There's not going to be a world without anti-Semitism. And that's why there's so many people being awakened, because they have to come to terms with that.
Absolutely.
Before I forget, you and I have spoken extensively, and you not once mentioned that you have a GPT AI thing for Jewish events. Hold on. Well, like, what is this?
It wouldn't come up with you because you know the lay of the land of
Okay, fair.
Jewish community. But I had a lot of people reaching out to me, like not knowing a thing. They were that alien, that ET with a kippah that I mentioned. And I can resonate with that because a few years ago, that was me. I didn't know anything about the Jewish community. So in the weeks after October 7th, like I was like, how can I disseminate this knowledge? I put everything I know in my brain about the New York City Jewish community, and not just like the social events, but all of the resources that exist for learning about both Judaism and Israel activism. Like there's so many programs that like nonprofits that are dedicated to helping you find a learning partner. Like that's a great resource that a lot of people don't know about, that I didn't know about. So I put all of this information into a GPT, and I hope it's been helpful for some people I've sent it to. I'm happy to send it to anyone. I think it's not a good idea to post it publicly on the World Wide Web just for security reasons when I'm mentioning like specific Jewish communities with contact details and things like that. But I'm happy to share it with anyone who is interested.
Sorry if this is a stupid question. I feel like I should know the answer to this, but what is a GPT?
Oh, like a specialized GPT within ChatGPT that you load with information that helps it answer specialized questions.
Oh, so now if I go on ChatGPT, I can ask like, hey, where are the Jewish events in the city for Reform Jews?
So you could ask that to this bot that I built, but not just generally. Like it's not on the general GPT-4.
Got it. Wait, this is really cool.
I like it because it allows for two-way conversation. Because I think GPT actually is a good guide in answering some questions when you don't even know the right questions to ask. I don't think it should replace a spiritual guide. That kind of takes the whole point out of it. But if I just provided a link farm of like what the different Shabbat groups are, that's not very useful because it doesn't allow for the nuances of like, are you seeking social connection? Are you seeking connection to Jewish learning and the deeper aspects of Judaism? So I've tried to load it with all that information. Sometimes does a good job.
Did you ever give it a name?
I think it's called Jewish Community Guidance Counselor.
Oh, I thought it would be like Britt's bot or something.
Back to the Produced by Britt. I learned to keep my name out of things in case it becomes bigger than I expect.
Well, actually, I completely understand why you're saying about your name, because now I feel like whenever people have any questions about Jewish life, they default to asking you, for better or for worse.
The thing is, I will always say yes. I dedicate a lot of my time to just being there to answer questions. Like if that's some knowledge that I possess, like I am in no place to gatekeep that. A very nuanced knowledge. But let's just say a few years ago, if you were to tell me that I would be someone that people turn to ask questions about the Jewish community, I probably would have looked at you and thought you were crazy.
And in the Jewish event scene, as we've discussed, there's always, even at the networking and professional events, there's a little bit of an undertone of like, what are the odds I find my soulmate here? Just a nice Jewish boy. And
Jewish
I've known
is a great KPI.
Exactly. So I've noticed talking to my girlfriends, this is anecdotal, but I bet you there is some kind of trend here. People feel pressure going to Jewish events and hope, like a wish inside, that they will meet someone that they can leave the event with. There's a little bit of pressure, like, gotta look good because I might meet my boyfriend here. And it has taken some of the magic out of the events, even if the events themselves have an interesting agenda or whatever, because inadvertently the purpose of the event is not the original purpose. It's the purpose of finding someone to date or potentially a partner. How can young Jewish people, men or women, navigate that when attending Jewish events?
Oh, that is an astute observation and a tough question. at some of these like very well produced, more expensive Jewish events, I think it's counterproductive because people go in with the mindset of like, okay, I just invested $200 in this ticket, X amount in my dress for this gala, and a lot of my time. So I better be walking away with my soulmate. And that's not the way that you find your soulmate. I personally would suggest just focusing on genuine connections. Like, even if those genuine connections are not people that are of dating interest to you, then they probably know people who are of dating interest to you. Just like surrounding yourself with affinity circles will bring you closer to your besheret, hopefully.
That was such a business term, affinity circles. I've not heard that one in a quick minute since my Amazon days.
Oh, the Amazon days.
Yeah, which I don't know if you saw on the news, but now there's not only tracking badges, how many days a week you're going into the office, they're also tracking how many hours you're staying in the office on a given day. And employees will now be required to stay 2 to 6 hours a day at the office in order for it to count towards their attendance. And there is disciplinary action if you do not comply.
That is very Big Brother.
Yes, it is. I was talking to a friend recently who just took a job at Amazon, and I tried to walk him off the ledge. But you know what? The name on the resume is a big selling point. So I get it. I did it myself. So I would be a hypocrite, right, to say otherwise. But I was telling him like this level of not encroachment, but overbearingness. It's higher than pre-pandemic levels. Like there was an expectation for you to show up to the office prior to the pandemic, right? 5 days a week. It wasn't 3. But I can't say anybody was tracking your badge. Like that is a next level stalking.
Because it was the norm, not the exception. Like now our cultural habits have changed. So this concept of quiet quitting didn't really exist pre-pandemic.
I think quiet quitting always existed. It's just you were sitting there zoning out at work at the office, quitting mentally as opposed to physically quitting by not showing up to the office and, you know, sitting in your pajamas at home. With that said, this is an interesting thing about precedent. This is where precedent is very important. Setting precedents allows us to make exceptions for things that we otherwise couldn't do because that precedent wasn't there. So by tracking employees' badges and the duration that they stay and how many days they stay, we're opening ourselves up to unforeseen consequences over how that data could be used against us. They may claim it's used to see how often you go to the office, but it could also expose you to some other kind of tracking and some other kind of consequence that they didn't disclose to you. So that's where precedent is really important. We don't want to set the precedent that tracking employees is acceptable. Full stop. And you know what? Speaking of Amazon, just corporate America, I was hoping you'd give more detail about your transition out of corporate to being a full-time Jewish professional. It's not an easy leap. There are a lot of people we know and love who are amazing Jewish community leaders who self-organize events or host programming that is awesome, or even some of them organize trips like vacation. But the Jewish professional landscape is a little bit of a taboo because people are worried it doesn't pay well. Like it's hard to work in Jewish nonprofit and Jewish leadership because that industry compared to tech is like not even close. So to take a leap out of corporate America and become a full-time Jewish professional, it's a choice. It's a commitment. How did you navigate that?
So it was certainly a big jump, not one that was on my bingo card for this year or in my 5-year plan. But in short, for the first time in my life, I chose to work with my heart. As I explained before, Jewish community building was always a passion of mine, but prior to October 7th, I saw it as simply a passion. Like I had my day job, it paid the bills, and then separately, I had my tikkun olam, and I chose to dedicate my free time towards what made me happy. But after October 7th, as more and more people started to come to me looking for Jewish community, this started to feel like more of a vocation than a passion. And I came to a point where like I had to make a choice. Like a lot of people didn't even realize I had a day job. I started to get more known for this. And I realized that no matter where my professional career takes me, I'm going to experience the greatest level of growth if I'm doing something that inspires me to go the extra mile and really pour passion into my work. So as the dust started to settle from the immediate needs post October 7th, I started to zoom out and think about what this all means for myself. And I became open to dedicating my career towards being behind the scenes of Jewish initiatives. If it were something that I could do in a way that is, first of all, like financially substantial and something that also has a trajectory that pushes me in the right direction for my career. So it was around that time that I was approached by the incredible Birthright Excel team through a mutual connection of someone who knew about the work I was doing in the Jewish community. And I learned that they were looking to hire a community director to build community among the fellows. And it truly felt like Bashara. So I eventually quit my job and I took on this new opportunity. And now I get to do what I love for a living.
It's almost like you had to get a second resume of all your Jewish stuff versus like the Resi stuff.
It was so weird. I was like deleting Google from my resume. Like I never thought I'd be doing this, but I made like a Jewish resume where I had to like quantify some of the things that I was doing just for fun.
Hosted 25,000 young professionals in the span of a year, driving simcha, morale.
Well said.
I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it would be very interesting to see how you can quantify different Jewish events and what the results are for Jewish organizations.
So this is actually a very difficult part of my job. In my personal life, people will often tell me like a year after I make a connection that and like all the ways that it changed their life professionally or personally. And like, I don't really need credit for that. Like I always say, Hashem knows. It's nice when I hear about what happens with a connection I make, but it doesn't really matter. There are no KPIs I'm trying to hit. But in my job, I do have to prove to the donors that there's a return on their investment. And it's really hard to quantify some things that can only be qualified.
The other thing I was thinking about that I think you have a unique position to weigh in on is matchmaking. There's like a resurgence of Jewish matchmaking. Yeah. There's a new girl. She's young. She's probably our age. She runs an account called Dating by Delaney. Have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So she's been around maybe a couple of months. She is pretty well connected, it seems like, and she sets people up on dates. And then she also has some clients. And also, you know what, I'll add Loop is kind of trying to do the same thing, right? Loop is an app where you set up your friends if you think they're a good match. They're trying to self-organize matchmaking in the way that we once self-organized Shabbat events, going away from the big organizations. What do you think about that? Because to me, as a young Jewish woman, going to these events, when you talked about how that's not the goal of the event to meet someone, when I, bought a $400 dress and did my hair for $100 and my makeup for $100 and there were 100 cute guys and none of them took my number, I was like, this is a horrible ROI.
It feels like a failure of an event if you don't walk away with a number, if you're going in with that intention.
Oh, and I was. Why else would I go? Are you kidding me?
Okay, so similarly to how I described it in the beginning of this episode about like the differentiation between the more organized Jewish organizations and then more of the grassroots initiatives, I think you have that in the matchmaking world too. Like there are a lot of matchmakers you can reach out to and like often a paid service, and that is their work. But there are so many individuals like the super connectors that we've mentioned that serve as matchmakers in their own right. I think that dating apps are a great way to get yourself out there and learn more about what you like and what you don't like. But they also do get us into this habit of checking off the boxes. And I think that's a dangerous habit to get into. I prefer value-based dating and dating on just like your gut feeling of who you vibe with. And it takes an individual to know both parties to make that connection of who would just be a vibe. So I have some people that I keep in mind. And when I meet someone that I think they would vibe with, I'll text both parties and put them in a group chat, and things may or may not take off from there.
My new thing is I think I'm going to stop going on first dates if I didn't do a little FaceTime or phone call screen, because
all about that.
I've had it, y'all. I've had it. If somebody thinks that's weird, they can think that, and I don't care. But I'm tired of wasting my own damn time. Thank you so much.
It's wasting your own time and it's wasting their time and often money. When you're dating based on values, I think you can easily rule people out. And if you would be able to know that within the first 5 minutes of a date, then there's no point in wasting either of your time.
I have to tell you a story that Britt, you personally have not heard yet.
Ooh,
I'm going to spill some tea.
Spill the tea.
When I lived in Philly dating scene is rough. Okay. You know, because you grew up in the suburbs of Philly, and I probably have friends that still live in Philly that are dating.
I've heard that the Hinge market is not the best there.
It's small. And also for someone like me who doesn't drink alcohol and doesn't like to watch sports, that rules out pretty much the entire male contingent, the Jewish male contingent of the city of Philadelphia. So I was up against the challenge of my own interest. But anyway, when I was living there, about a year in, this girl who was pretty well connected in the Chabad young professionals community said that she was going to open up a matchmaking service. And lucky for you, you were offered a free trial to use her service. And here's how the free trial worked. You filled out a Google form with all your information, what you're looking for. And for 1 month, you're in her database. And if she has a match for you, she will reach out and connect you. And if she doesn't have a match and the free trial's up, you gave it a shot and that's it. So a match is not guaranteed, which is a perfectly fair term and condition that you can impose as someone giving this kind of free trial. So I signed up for her database, and literally within the week, I heard back, great news, we have a match for you. And the thing about working with this matchmaker is it was completely blind. I couldn't get anything, not a name, not a photo, just that she felt they matched my criteria. So she was like, I already have someone for you. And the best part is they're Russian speaking Jewish, like exactly like you said was important to you. And so I immediately was like, okay, great. When can we set up the date or the phone call? I gave her my availability and she ghosted me for 2.5 weeks. And then on the last day of the free trial, she was like, okay, well, I'm ready to set up the date, but oops, it looks like your free trial's over. So you're going to have to pay to find out who this guy is.
Wow.
And so I emailed her and I was like, you held this out on purpose, sis. You had this guy, you held it out on purpose. But the funniest part is I know who the guy is and we're friends, and it would have never worked if I met him.
Well, there you go. You didn't need to pay for the service to learn that.
Yes. He's like one of the only Russian speaking Jewish guys in Philly. And what he told me is because he was signed up for her service, he said, she pimped me out to everybody. I must have been the only guy she had in her database.
So funny. So I've seen some interesting business models around this. Like, of course, you have your traditional business model of people who mutually opt in to be within a matchmaker's network. But I've seen this new model of like a one-way opt-in. So like someone pays for the service and then the matchmaker is like finding options for them. So I once received a LinkedIn DM from a matchmaker saying like, oh, like, are you interested in my services? And I was like, thank you, but I'm not interested in paying for these services. And she was like, no, like I have a client that has paid me and I think you would be a good match for him. And I'm like, oh, so I get a free ride on what he's paid for? Like, this is kind of cool. Just all these different business models around this concept of matchmaking. And I think it's a difficult business to monetize because it should be based on goodwill. Like, I certainly have thought about going into matchmaking as a business profession, but I think that the second that you start to capitalize on it, you lose that goodwill. Like if I'm trying to pimp you out, Margarita, then I'm not finding you genuine connections. So that's my personal take on
Yeah, you don't have my best interest anymore. So what you're saying is actually the traditional matchmaking model where the client pays and the matches could be anybody. And if you're the match and not the client, you don't pay. So one idea I had, and I asked Shayna TB, who was on the podcast about this, I sent her a voice note on WhatsApp. I said, why don't matchmakers have this kind of commercial model? You have your book of clients or people and you kind of passively set up matches and you work with them for a certain amount of time. It could be a month, it could be 3 months. And if you don't set up a match, then you don't get paid. But if you set up a match and it succeeds, they have to pay you maybe twice as much as they would have otherwise. Kind of like a real estate agent, right? A real estate agent only gets paid if they close the sale.
Right.
So I was wondering why matchmaking didn't go to the real estate model. And Shayna was like, hell no, I'm trying to get paid. You know, she's like, I want to get paid. No, I'm not taking that risk.
You got to learn the ABCs. Always be closing.
Yeah. So I am still curious. I do think that if a matchmaking provider came out on the market and said, you only pay if we get you a match, and there could be clear terms of what a match, a successful match looks like, they could make a lot of money that way because it gives you confidence in the matchmaker that the matchmaker actually is trying to set you up with someone that's going to be a good fit.
I think that a lot of people who do matchmaking like personally, not as their main career, they do operate on the model that like it's expected, it's implied that if you get married, you pay them a lump sum. That's often how it works in the Jewish world and among the more religious community of matchmakers. I personally haven't seen it firsthand. Like, I wouldn't even know how to ask for that. Like, I think it's something that is just expected, but I think it should be made into a formal business model, just paid on success.
I'll have to think on that.
Maybe in your next life.
Maybe this is a business idea somebody listening to this podcast should develop.
If anyone out
it's
there.
It's not me or you, but somebody listening, please, for the love of God, take me out of my misery.
Yes, help us find our Basharets.
Yeah, I say this, we're recording this on a Friday. As in a few hours, I'll be going to a Shabbat dinner where I will again be like, is there any cute guy here? Only to be disappointed.
You never know. Shouldn't walk in with that attitude. Should be open-minded.
Yeah. And as we wrap up here, are there any words of encouragement or pieces of advice that you could share with young Jewish people?
I would say that you should not feel imposter syndrome with your Jewish identity. Like, you don't have to look a certain way or do a certain set of mitzvahs in order to be Jewish. Judaism can mean a lot of different things to different people. So I would encourage you to find what aspects of Judaism resonate with you personally.
Thank you. Next thing, rapid fire round. Got a couple of questions for you. Don't think too hard. Just answer. First, favorite Jewish holiday?
Purim.
You always have good costumes. One year, I think you dressed as Borat, which
yes, that was Borat.
Iconic. And then Larry David this past year.
Yeah, that was one I was proud of. It was one where like I genuinely looked very ugly. Like, people didn't recognize me. Like, I think I turned off any potential partners in that room, and it allowed me to really separate the good ones.
The people with the sense of humor and appreciation for the craft.
Yes, it's such a craft.
Okay, next one. Favorite Shabbat dinner theme?
Bring a non-Jew and show them the tradition of Shabbat.
Wait, this is actually really good. That's a great theme. Okay, next question. Favorite Israeli artist?
Matisyahu.
Solid. Jew crush?
Sacha Baron Cohen as Borat. In the green.
I love that you've dressed as both Larry David and Sacha Baron Cohen as Borat. Because you love Larry David too. So
I do. Like, another Jew crush of mine.
Yeah. Okay. Another one. Favorite Ginsta, that is Jewish Insta account to follow?
Meaningful Minute.
I love that account. Actually, a lot of inspiration for my podcast comes from their Meaningful People podcast, because I know they also interview Jewish people, but that one's more centered around like the more observant crowd.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Jewish Insta account to follow is The Flag Guy. Do you know this account?
No.
Your life's going to be changed. What? Look up at The Flag Guy. He's this dude that goes to all the rallies and the encampments and everything and holds an American and an Israeli flag, like big flags. Wow.
No,
and he's so funny. I've been trying to get him on the podcast. Unfortunately, he does not really want to be like public. It seems like, yeah.
He's very publicly at these rallies, but I get that. Well,
he wears sunglasses.
Anyone listening knows him. We got to convince
please connect me. So he used to have this thing where he would take donations from people. And then when you send your donation, it was called like buy me coffee or something like that. You could write a little note. And I was like, please come on the podcast. Here's $15. This is not a bribe.
What's a girl got to do?
Yeah, seriously. Okay. And how can people connect with you on social media and learn more about what you're up to?
So people can follow me on Instagram if they feel so inclined. My Instagram is Britt Levy, but I'll warn that I'm private on there. Like I mostly just accept people I know. Like I kind of just post about my personal experiences in the Jewish community, and I prefer to operate through one-on-one connections. But more importantly, I'm always happy to serve as a guide or make introductions to people seeking Jewish community. So I recommend anyone to check out the accounts I mentioned in this episode, or I'm happy to provide the GPT that I mentioned.
And then last question for you. It's one that I ask every single guest. Who would you like to nominate for People Jew Want to Know podcast?
I want to nominate Zach Sage Fox. You may recognize him from videos that have gone viral where he's served undercover at anti-Israel rallies and revealed some really disturbing truths about the opinions fueling the anti-Israel movement. But he didn't just become an overnight sensation. He's been a performer and a producer, hard at work in the entertainment world for over a decade. I've known Zach for probably over 10 years now. We grew up in the same town, and I can't say that he knew who I was because he was a bit of a local celebrity. He was known for creating these viral videos, interviewing people at the Jersey Shore. But then we actually became friends at Penn. And when we were in the real world, he once said to me, like, what are all these Jewish events you're involved in? And how can I get involved? And I was like, Zach, careful what you wish for, because I will indeed spam you with invites to Jewish events. And then he got super involved. And before I knew it, he became a key player in the fight against anti-Semitism on social media. So I'm very proud to see him channeling his talents into fighting anti-Semitism online. And I'd love for you and the listeners of the pod to get to know the brains and the heart behind what he's doing.
Thank you for that nomination. Zach is absolutely amazing and hilarious. So I cannot wait to introduce the listenership to him and his story.
Some racy comments on the pod. He's
so funny. So funny. Thank you so much for doing this, Britt.
Thank you for having me. As you know, I'm a big fan of the pod, and it is such an honor to be on the other side of the mic.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please go ahead and rate us 5 stars. Be the first to hear our episodes by subscribing to People Jew Want to Know wherever you get your podcasts. And for exclusive content, follow us on Instagram at People Jew Want to Know.